Thousands of years ago, with no anesthetic and no antibiotics, ancient humans would take a sharpened stone and drill a hole straight through a living person's skull. And here is the part that should genuinely stop you. We know that many of them survived. We can tell because the bone around the edge of the hole grew smooth and healed over. And that only happens if the patient got up, walked away, and lived for months or years afterward. This operation, called trepanation, is one of the oldest surgeries on Earth. People performed it and survived it, in a world with absolutely nothing to take the pain away. So how did anyone endure agony like that, back before a single painkiller existed? And before we get to how they coped, we need to talk about the thing itself, because pain is far stranger than it seems. It feels like a pure enemy, something to be shut off and escaped. But here is the truth that flips it around. Pain is one of the best things that ever happened to you. There are people, very rare, who are born completely unable to feel it, and it does not make them superheroes. It quietly kills them. They break bones and keep walking on them. They rest a hand on a hot stove and never pull away. They bite clean through their own tongue without noticing. Most die young, worn down by a lifetime of damage they simply never felt coming. Because pain is not, deep down, an enemy at all. It is an alarm, one of the smartest survival tools evolution ever built, screaming at you to protect the body that carries you. So the real question is not how our ancestors made the pain stop. It is how they lived every single day alongside an alarm they could almost never switch off. Think about what that actually means. Pain is the teacher that makes you snatch your hand from the fire the very first time, so that you never do it again. It is the reason you rest a broken leg instead of shattering it completely. A person who feels nothing is a person constantly, invisibly destroying themselves. So evolution wired us to hurt on purpose, because the ones who felt pain lived longer than the ones who did not. But that same brilliant system meant that for our ancestors, life came with a constant, unavoidable soundtrack of aches, injuries, rotting teeth, and wounds, and no easy way to make any of it quiet. So they got to work, and what they came up with is genuinely impressive. Their first and greatest medicine cabinet was the living world around them. Over thousands of years, by slow and painful trial and error, humans became extraordinary botanists of pain. They discovered that if you chewed the bark of a willow tree, your headache and your fever would ease. They had no idea why, but they were exactly right. Willow bark contains a chemical that is the direct ancestor of the aspirin sitting in your cupboard right now. They found the opium poppy, and the ancient Sumerians loved it so much they called it the joy plant. In the Andes, people chewed coca leaves to numb pain and exhaustion. Elsewhere, it was cannabis, or a dozen other plants. Each one a local discovery, each one a small victory against the ache. These were not lucky accidents. This was a vast, hard-won library of knowledge about which exact plant could quiet which exact pain, memorized and passed down across countless generations. The second tool was one you might be tempted to dismiss until you understand how it truly works: the mind. All over the world, healing was ritual. A healer, a chant, a rhythm, a ceremony. The whole community gathered close around the person who was suffering. And it is easy to roll your eyes at this, right up until you learn that it genuinely works. Your brain has a built-in pharmacy of its own. When you truly believe you are being helped, when you feel safe and cared for and you expect relief, your body releases its own natural painkillers and the pain measurably drops. This is not imaginary and it is not a trick. It is the placebo effect, and it is real, and it is powerful. A confident healer, a trusted ritual, and a circle of people holding you were never just superstition. They were a genuine way of switching on the body's own pain-killing machinery. And that machinery is astonishing. Deep inside your own body sits a supply of natural chemicals so similar to morphine that we literally named them after it. We call them endorphins, and they are the reason a soldier can be badly wounded in the middle of a battle and feel almost nothing until the fighting finally stops. In a crisis, your body can flood itself with these substances and simply switch the pain off, buying you the handful of minutes you might need to escape a predator, or fight for your life. Our ancestors could not brew morphine, but they carried a version of it inside them the entire time, and pain, fear, and even sheer effort could unlock it. Then there were the physical tricks, and this is where one of the most haunting discoveries in all of archaeology comes in. When scientists studied the body of a 5,000-year-old man frozen in a glacier, the one we call the Iceman, they found his skin covered in more than 60 tattoos. But these were not decoration. Nearly every single one had been placed directly over a joint worn down by arthritis, exactly the spots where a man of his age would have ached the most. It looks, for all the world, like a medical treatment, a prehistoric attempt to fight pain by marking and working the sorest points on the body. And it fits something we only understand now. Rubbing, pressure, heat, and other strong sensations can genuinely crowd out and dampen pain signals on their way to the brain. It is exactly why you instinctively grab and squeeze a banged elbow. Our ancestors had stumbled onto the same trick, thousands of years before anyone could explain why it worked. Because, make no mistake, a lot of this pain was relentless. Consider the humble toothache. A tooth rotted all the way down to the nerve is one of the most agonizing things a human body can produce, and there was simply no escaping it. So people fought back. At one ancient site, archaeologists found human teeth that had been carefully drilled thousands of years ago using a tiny stone-tipped drill spun by hand, almost certainly to dig out the decay. We have even found a very old tooth with a cavity neatly filled with beeswax. Ancient dentistry, performed on a fully awake patient with nothing but a plant to chew against the pain. Just sit with that image for a moment. And this brings us right back to where we started, to that skull with a hole in it. When someone took a hard blow to the head, pressure could build up dangerously inside, and drilling through the bone may have relieved it and saved a life. Open wounds were sealed by pressing burning hot metal or stone against them, cauterizing the flesh to stop the bleeding and the rot. Broken bones were hauled back into place and bound tight, and all of it was done to a wide-awake human being, held down by others, biting hard on wood or leather, gripping the hands of the people who loved them, with the plants and the rituals and their own endorphins as the only mercy on offer. The wonder is not that it was brutal. The wonder is that it worked often enough to be worth doing over and over for thousands of years. But maybe the biggest difference between them and us is not the plants, or the tricks, or the surgeries. It is the relationship. For our ancestors, pain was not an emergency, and it was not an outrage. It was simply a part of being alive, a constant companion that everyone shared and nobody escaped. And when pain is the normal background hum of every single day, you build a completely different kind of endurance from the one we have. They were not tougher than us by some accident of nature. They were tougher because they had to be, because the alarm never truly stopped, and life had to go on anyway. And then, astonishingly recently, all of it changed almost overnight. For nearly the entire human story, right up until about 170 years ago, surgery meant lying there awake and feeling every second of it. And a surgeon's single greatest skill was raw, merciful speed. And then, in the middle of the 1800s, doctors discovered that certain gases could drop a patient into a painless sleep. For the first time in the history of our species, a person could be cut open and feel absolutely nothing. It is almost impossible to overstate how enormous that was. A wall of agony that every human being before them had simply lived behind was, suddenly, gone. Soon after came a flood of reliable painkillers, the aspirin and the pills we now treat as utterly ordinary. Which brings it back to you, and to something genuinely worth feeling. That headache you erase in 20 minutes with a pill from a drawer would have meant days of suffering for every single ancestor you have ever had. You belong to the first thin sliver of humans in the entire story of our kind who can reliably reach up and switch the alarm off. For hundreds of thousands of years, everyone who came before you woke up, hurt in some way, and simply carried it, all day, every day, with nothing but bark and belief and the strength of the people around them. They endured a life that hurt in ways we can barely imagine, and they kept going, and they are the reason you are here at all. So the next time you take something for an ache and feel it quietly fade, stop for 1 second and notice it. You are doing something almost no human who ever lived was able to do. If you made it this far, you're exactly the kind of person I make these for. Subscribe, and we'll go find the next strange thing together. For almost all of human history, pain was not a problem you solved. It was a companion you learned to carry. We are the very first people who ever got to set it down, and we did it in the blink of an eye.